Everything you need to know about drum hoops, part 2. Welcome back to this series. This is the second installment in this series on drum hoops, and we are exploring all the alternative drum hoop styles that are not triple flange. So we have our single flange with clips, we have our double flange with eye holes for tuning rods, we have our diecast, and we have our two different types of wood hoops, the ones with holes and ones with claws. I explained in the first part all the terminology and tried to take you through the history of how drum hoops have evolved. So if you need a refresher, go back and check that episode. We're going to just dive straight into the comparisons. The setup exactly the same as last time. I'm just using 3 mics, bass drum mic in front of the bass drum, a single overhead, and a single snare drum mic, all by Earthworks. They're all going into an Allen & Heath CQ18T digital mixer with just the most standard kind of processing with EQ and limiting. And that goes straight into OBS. No editing, no mixing after the fact. And the room is a 12 by 12 office that's been fully treated by Audio Mute to essentially negate the room sound at all. So you're getting essentially these drums as close to in a vacuum as possible. Basically like a isolation booth. So there's no reflections, no reverb, no flutter. So what you're hearing from the drum is exactly what it's reproducing. And I tuned all the drums identically. Bottom head, F sharp, 4th octave. Top head to start to get everything seated was a C sharp, a 4th below that. I use a tune bot and a dial tune to make sure I'm being as scientific as possible. All of the drums are 5x14 seamless aluminum Drum Factory Direct drums with 10 lugs. They're all solid brass tube lugs. We have a single ply 10 mil coated DFD batter head and a 3 mil single ply clear DFD bottom head. 20 strand DFD German style snappy wires, and I am playing with ProMark Carter McLean model drumsticks, which are between a 5A and a 5B. We're going to start by comparing the two single flange options. They're 2.3 steel with clips and then 2.5 solid brass with clips. They look identical, so visually you can't tell the difference. They have the single horizontal flange that comes out to the side and then a straight wall up. And the same clips can work for either one of these. You can definitely tell the difference in the weight just picking them up. Like I know this is the steel and this is the brass. To compare, this 2.3 single flange steel weighs 6.9 pounds. The 2.5 single flange brass weighs 7.2 pounds. So not a huge difference, but I could definitely feel it when I was picking the drums up. Otherwise, the dimensions are the same. Both of them tuned up really easily and smoothly initially to get them to the tension. Fine tuning them was okay, probably average. What I did notice, and I noticed this with any drum that uses clips, is it's a little bit imprecise. You don't have that super smooth action of the drum key with the clip in there. It's a little bit of a grindy experience, which you may or may not dig. But it did hold its tension fine, and they were easy enough to fine tune individually. So let's first go check out the 2.3 steel single flange. Same tuning as before. We're going to start at fundamental note of G, which is like a medium high with snares off, snares on. What are we listening for? We're listening for the aggressiveness of the attack, the length of the decay of that initial attack, how's the sustain affected, how's the overall fall off affected, brightness, all the factors. Is it integrated? Is it separated? Is it focused? Is it complex? So let's get started. I would say it's a well-integrated rim shot sound with a pretty smooth sustained decay, kind of complex overtones. All right, with the wires on. So with these hoops, you have to be careful where you position the drum for your cross stick or your rim clicks, because you could smack that clip and it doesn't give you a very clean sound. Same thing with where you hit a rim shot. It feels pretty gnarly to hit the stick on that clip versus the hoop, which is a straight hoop. This feels much more kind of complex sounding, less focused. This was harder to tune to get a perfect pitch out of it. It's a little bit kind of like, you know, just a little bit more complex. Also, those clips and everything make the experience of tuning the drum a little bit kind of not super smooth, but it's a vibe. It's definitely a vibe. Nice and integrated, which I dig. Let's go to the higher tuning now. It's a steel hoop. If you remember from the 2.3 triple flange, they had the most kind of metallic bite to them. So let's see if that holds true with the single flange. So it's up to G sharp. Nope, pretty well integrated. Pretty smooth. I'm not hearing any of that high-end bite. Pretty cool. I dig it. I like the complexity. It doesn't have that real kind of shrill high end. I'm hearing some of the mid-range kind of bark kind of peek through just a little bit. I didn't expect these to perform that well at high tunings with that much tension. I thought they would kind of choke out or something, but I like it. All right, let's go down to the F sharp. So what I'm hearing, if you remember the 2.5 solid brass triple flange, it was a straight line between the attack and the final release with all the overtones. This feels like it has a little bit of a curve, a rounded curve coming out. It's like the attack kind of pushes the sustain out a little bit and then it falls off. So there's like this little bit of a blooming effect, which I find quite interesting and musical. I honestly didn't expect to like these hoops all that much. I dig it. It's a vibe. It's a vibe, but it's not trashy or like wild. I think the summary for me with this hoop is the hoop gets out of the way. It's well integrated within the overall sound. It gets out of the way. It's letting the shell and the heads kind of step front and take control, which is really cool. I really dig it. So that's the F sharp. Let's take it down another half step to F. I like the vibe. Very vibey, but not wild and crazy. I feel like, whatever reason, Matt Chamberlain comes to mind. Definitely a vintage flavor. Hear how the attack is getting out of the way, and you can hear the shell and the head kind of pushing forward. Yeah, love it. Tons of vibe, but also very useful. This would be a perfect studio drum if someone says, give me a snare drum with some character. That's kind of got it. Same drum, 5x14 seamless aluminum. That's the 2.3 single-flange steel. Now let's move over to the more expensive, higher-end 2.5 solid brass. Both of these, because they have the clips, you have to be aware of where you place them, because it feels really weird to hit a rim shot on one of those clips, and also rim clicks can be a little bit funky. That's the downside of it. Also, the overtone, getting the overtones perfectly tuned. Well, maybe slightly harder to do than with your regular 2.3 triple flange. So looks exactly the same with the clips, a little bit thicker and made of solid brass. If it's parallel with what we experienced with the triple flange, it should be a fuller sound, a wider frequency range, a little bit smoother, kind of generically more musical, although the 2.3s were pretty darn cool. So let's check them out. Super smooth. Hear how perfectly even that decay is. Has the same effect to my ears. It's the right angle, it's the right triangle with a really long slope. I think I like the brass better. It's just different, but again, it's very complex and rich with a more integrated sound, but not getting kind of wild and crazy. You could definitely play this wide open and it would just be a satisfying bed of sound. All right, let's take it up to the G sharp. These are also a bit more expensive. Keep that in mind. If the 2.3 gives you 95% of what you want from a single flange hoop, is it worth it to spend the extra money for that 5%? Just depends on your situation. This just sounds, again, gives you a big versatility where you can kind of dial it in with a little bit of dampening or whatever. So it gives you kind of maximum sound to experiment with. If you don't want that, go the other route. But here's the G sharp. Yeah, nice full attack, but no harshness. You can hear a little bit of high overtones from the rim click, but very smooth. All right, here's what the snare wire is on. It still feels very, very linear in the sustain. You can really hear there at the end of that fill when I go to play the rim clicks, I'm muting the head. You can hear there was tons of sustain that was still happening that I dampened when I put my hand on the head. Very, very linear. I don't hear that bloom that I was getting from the steel. Let's go down to the F sharp. Again, very musical, very rich, complex, but smooth. Sounds more expensive. It is more expensive, but it sounds more expensive. Beefier. There's like some more kind of body. Again, it kind of makes the drum sound brass. Another like perfect for a studio. For like your vibey drum, it's kind of perfect. It's like one of the rare situations when you want the drum to be wide open, when it just sounds this kind of rich and balanced and full. There's no frequency kind of poking out. Everything's just very smooth. All right, let's go down to the F. This is where sometimes the drums can get kind of trashy, for better or for worse. Let's see if it holds it together a little bit more with these 2.5 solid brass single flange. Here we go, F. Yeah, bingo. Super smooth. You're gonna get sick of me playing this overly busy reggae beat. Love it. Sounds like a bigger drum. It almost sounds like a deeper drum. I don't know which ones I like better between the two single flange. They're just very different. Starting to hear a little bit of starting to hear some bark, but again, it's very smooth. It's not annoying. I love it. I can't decide. Those are both very cool. I didn't expect to really like either one of them, but that's the single flange. So that was the steel versus the brass. apples and oranges, I think. Depends on how kind of high-endy and full frequency you want it to sound versus, you know, a little bit more overall kind of vibey between the steel and the brass. Let's move on. Now let's check out the Gretsch Style 2.3 stick chopper. Remember, it looks like a triple flange hoop, except it doesn't have that extra rolled edge on top. So it's straight up, but otherwise it has the outward horizontal and bottom downward flange that you find on any triple flange hoop. Same weight, essentially, as a 2.3 regular triple flange. Tuning was normal. It held its tension as you would expect. You know, the one caution is it will chop up your sticks, but let's take a listen to it and then assess. All right, here's the G fundamental. A lot of bite. All right, I'm remembering now. The experience of playing this, it felt like there was a really clean attack, but it was integrated. It didn't poke through the top. So it had like all the bite, but it was still kind of within the overall sound. I had a lot of fun with these hoops. So now let's go with the wires turned on. Kind of similar to the 2.3 steel triple flange. Like there's definitely some high-end overtones, but I felt they were just pushed down into the overall sound a little bit more. It's just, the question is that difference worth the potential stick damage that you might experience from these sharper hoops? So let's take it up to the G sharp. Yeah, it seems to be consistent. I'm getting a bright, prominent attack, but it's just pushed down into the body of the sound. Whereas the triple flange, for whatever reason, it like poked through more. Turn the wires on. Nice pop. I dig that. All right, so it gave me the aggressiveness that I want from the rim shot at the higher tuning. I didn't hear the real kind of like piercing overtones though. We still might be having the standard 2.3 triple flange might still be at the bottom of my list. All right, I'm gonna take it down to the F sharp. To me, it feels like it's punchy. I don't want to call it this. I want to say almost like it's a squared off kind of sound with a clean attack. It's a clean attack, and then it's like a squared off kind of punchy sound. I don't want to say boxy because that usually means negative, but it's more like there's this definitive starting point, and then it's this like flat line of tone. It's kind of cool. All right, let's turn the wires on. I mean, if I was recording a track that needed an open snare sound with a really clean, definitive attack that didn't jump out too much, this is perfect. This feels like a studio drum ready to go. Punchy, got some fullness. It's so weird, but it makes me visualize a cardboard box if you put a piece of sheet metal on the side of it. So the sheet metal is the initial attack, and then just the flat, kind of warm, fluffy box is the tone. All right, we're gonna go down to the F now. Same thing, real clean, sharp line with fatness and if you can hear that, I feel like there's a very razor thin without the metallic high overtones. All right, let's turn the wires on. It's kind of giving me what I would do to a recorded snare drum sound before I deliver it to an artist or a producer or a client, where I would boost a little bit of like the 5K or something to just give me a little bit of extra pinpoint kind of attack, and then boost a little bit of fundamental to pull out the beefiness of the shell. I feel like it's kind of doing that just with these hoops. So I never would have thought to grab a set of these hoops for a session drum. But now I'm considering I might put these on my deep Superphonic and see what it does. So that's the stick chopper. Very, very cool. Next up is our beefiest hoop. This is the Diecast. So the Diecast drum weighed 8.1 pounds with both hoops installed. The next one down was the 3.0 triple flange. Remember, that was 8 pounds. So it's 1/10 of a pound heavier than the 3.0s. Tuned up very quickly. The initial tuning to pitch very quickly. It held its tension very well. Like the 3.0s, it got a little bit higher overnight. The extra weight was getting the drum head to seat a little bit better. I have some notes about the sound, but we'll wait till we start listening to them before I comment on that. I did notice that some of the tension rods felt like they had less tension than others as I was fine tuning. I think that's because it's a very stiff surface, so it takes a while for it to seat. Eventually it settled in really nicely. So this is the Diecast. So let's go, same thing, here's the G. So not quite as fast of a drop off as the stick savers. But you're still hearing these. So here's the difference. I feel like the attack is long, but the sustain is shorter. That's got to be just from the weight. So it's got a more prominent attack that takes up more space, more time. The sustain dies off and decays faster. I'm only assuming because the weight of these hoops is actually dampening the drum head, so that last little bit of the sound is the drum head settling back to being silent. So it's giving me like a big attack, that lasts longer than some of the, like the opposite of the stick chopper, which was like a razor thin attack. This is a beefy attack, a nice sustain that dies off faster. There's a reason why these are used on a lot of like harder shells, hardwood shells, metallic shells. These hoops are often found on those because I think for that factor, it helps kind of end the note a little bit sooner, where like a really dense wood or a thick metal could ring forever. So this feels like the most attack heavy, but not shrill. It's like a dense, thick attack. Yeah, this sounds like if you need the most attack you can possibly get, that's all I'm really hearing is the attack, which could be a very good thing, depending on what style of music you play. So let's go to the higher tuning, the G sharp, see if that attack gets like way out of balance or if it actually enhances it. Hear that? It's kind of pop, making it poppy, making it sound like a pop. Personally, not a sound that I gravitate towards, but I can see certain styles of music where you need the snare to just pop and cut through a bunch of sound and get out of the way. I mean, that's basically what you're getting, maximum pop. Guarantee this, if I took this drum with these hoops to like a acoustic club date, it would be, hey, can you dampen that snare drum, or can you do something with that snare drum? It's sounding kind of bright. Conversely, I was playing with my old hard rock band where we were swinging for the fences at every show. This would save my elbow. I wouldn't have to hit quite as hard. So it's all context. I personally don't need drums to do this, but it's pretty amazing how drastic the shift between attack emphasis and pop versus some of the others that are more kind of smack or kind of punchy. All right, let's go down to the F sharp. Still pretty attack heavy. This hoop is very consistent. It's going to be all about the attack, no matter how you tune the drum. All right, let's turn the wires on. I mean, that's nice though. It's really nice. This tuning, it's giving me that extra smack that I sometimes have to EQ when I'm recording. I like that. Medium low with Diecast. Let's go down to the lower tuning, see what happens. This is cool. It's holding together the sound really nice. So the drum head is not distorting. It's kind of controlling everything, so you get a nice fat musical sound. I want the wires on. All right, so once again, the heavier hoop in the lower tuning seems to be functioning in a way that I find useful for controlling and shortening the overall kind of sustain and resonant and keeping everything kind of together, so it's not starting to distort and splay out. So I wouldn't have thought to use die-cast hoops for low tunings, but that's given an option. If you need a punchy, aggressive, low tuning drum, but you don't want to put a bunch of tape and stuff on it, die-cast hoop will give you something really good starting point. The last two drums here that we're going to check out is the modern style wood hoop and the vintage style wood hoop. We're going to start with the vintage style 5-ply maple with the claws. This is actually the lightest drum in the bunch, the whole bunch. 5.9 pounds is the total weight with these hoops installed. The next lightest was the 1.6 triple flange, and that is 6.2 pounds. So it's 0.3 of a pound lighter than that triple flange option. It tuned up evenly, nicely, no problems getting it up to tension, no problems fine tuning it. Again, you have to be aware of where you place the claws so you don't accidentally smack one of the tension rods when you play a rim shot. It will show wear, they will break, they will get damaged if you play really hard. You can even see there's some of the ink from the Carter McLean sticks is showing on the hoops, and I'm gonna have to sand that off. But I had a lot of fun with this drum. I really like this, so let's check it out. Here's our initial tuning, G fundamental. Actually sounds pretty even and smooth listening back. I was surprised how much I like these hoops. As expected, a little bit more wood block type rim click. All right, let's turn the wires on, see what we get. I'm hearing a little bit more mid-range kind of pushing forward, but it has some there's some high-end zing to this. Quite surprising. I don't know if you blindfolded me that I would guess that that had wood hoops on it. So let's go up to the G sharp. As expected, none of that metallic zing. It does have some zing, but it's not that super ultra high kind of metallic sound. You can hear it's a little bit more choke sounding. The drum head is choked a little bit more with the wood hoop on it. All right, very different from the brass, where I felt like the attack and sustain and release and decay, everything was very smooth to the very end. This feels separated again. You got this kind of ultra high initial attack. There's some mid-range that kind of pokes through, but I feel like there's some gaps in the frequency spectrum, and then there's some low end kind of supporting the overall thing. So it's a more of a separated type sound, not fully integrated and smooth, which is cool though. All right, let's take it down to the F sharp. Yeah, same thing. I'm hearing highs and low mids, but there's like some missing frequencies in there. A little bit more enhanced, kind of bottom side of the frequency spectrum. Getting a little bit of distortion from the drum head, now with the wires on. Yeah, it's like a lightness and airiness, I think, because those frequencies are being carved out of there naturally by the hoops. All right, down to the lower tuning. You hear it's starting to break apart. The overall sound is, but that can be a vibe. Almost acts like a like saturation or distortion in a good way. Turn the wires on. Yeah, it feels like another Matt Chamberlain, John Bryan sound. Cool vibe, airy, warm, but still has some bite to it, which I was expecting it to be kind of dark and maybe woofy sounding, but quite the opposite. It feels like airy. So that's the 5-ply maple. And lastly, we're going to take a look at this Yamaha style 20-ply maple wood hoop, the real chunky rectangular hoops with the tension rod holes. This is an interesting hoop. It's generally, I would say, less precise tuning overall. Getting it up to tension was less precise. Fine tuning it was less precise. I found that some tension rods made a huge changes in pitch and some made very little. I think, again, because it's an organic material, it's moving more. That could be a good thing or a bad thing, I guess, depending on your shell, depending on the tuning and the type of sound that you prefer. It's not the hoop that's going to give you a laser precise focused sound. It's more organic. It's going to have more color, a duller sound, because it is actually muting the drum in a certain way. So let's check it out. This is the 20-ply Yamaha style wood hoop. This one did not fit in my snare basket. I struggled. I had to balance it on the basket, and a couple times it fell over. So that's definitely a concern because it does add at least an inch to the overall diameter of your drum. I guess technically it adds an inch and a half, but so you need a big snare basket to hold this thing. That said, it still sounds cool, so let's get right into it. Here's G. Definitely a chunkier rim click sound. The rim shot is way less prominent, well integrated. Here are no super high overtones. Maybe a bit of a denser sound compared to the 5-ply wood hoops. Let's turn the wires on. It has a smooth sound but a fast decay. This might be one of the better sounds at this tuning of all the hoops. It just sounds like it's ready to roll. Punchier. The attack feels more kind of squared off versus a sharp razor blade initial attack. Another good option if you play with people or in situations where you want to soften the attack. So let's see what the higher tuning sounds like. Yeah, same thing. The hoop is getting out of the way. It's chunky, it cracks. But then all the zing and the zip you're hearing is coming from the drum head. All right, turn the wires on. All right, so the higher tuning, to me, is too much drum head. Now I'm hearing nothing but drum head and all the overtones of the head, because the hoop is, you hit it and it doesn't resonate. Basically, you get the initial attack and it's gone. And these thick hoops, I think, are probably dampening the shell. So all you're left with is the drum head. I don't really like the high tuning, because all you're hearing is just the swirl of overtones coming off the tighter batter head. You could dig that. It's not something that I would find useful. It's kind of the opposite of what I necessarily look for high tunings. All right, let's take it down to the F sharp. I like that character. I like the chunkier attack. More complex kind of sustain coming from it. All right, let's turn the wires on. Some like extra weight on the low end that's really nice. And again, it's kind of segmented, so you're getting some high end, some punchy mids, and then this low end. But I wouldn't say it's smooth sounding. I feel like that would punch through the mix nicely without being too aggressive. Let's go down to the low tuning now, F. cool. Turn the wires on. Yeah, that's where these hoops really shine. Low tuning, it kind of holds it together, gives you a real kind of smacky attack, without it being too aggressive, but it's still got a clear attack. It's a modern sound, but it's just warmer, richer, fatter. It works well at the low tunings, where you can kind of let the drum just kind of be a little bit wild. Very cool. So it's a good option. So between the two wood hoops, I think a more versatile option is the Yamaha style, and a more kind of old school, if you want to go low and kind of, you know, have a kind of an airy sound, the 5-ply maple. Both very cool. Just be aware with these Yamaha style, they will add that extra inch plus of diameter. And that's it for part 2 of this series of all the non-triple flange varieties of hoops that are available. Again, I hope this opened up your ears to some options. Maybe one is kind of resonating with you more than others, or maybe there's some surprises in here that you didn't expect to like, or maybe the ones you thought you always liked ended up being your least favorite. The point is, it's time to experiment. All this stuff is available. Let me know if you have any questions. Hit me up at drumcandypodcast@gmail.com, or you can DM me at Mike Dawson Drums or at the Drum Factory Direct Instagram page. Until next time, have fun experimenting, and we'll see you then.